themselves up. BBC News.
Hello and welcome to The Food Chain. I'm Emily Thomas. On this programme, we explore the economics, science and culture of food. This week, we're shaking it up a bit, pulverising it, in fact.
Shake, 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 Sinora, shake it all the time.
Do you find you get tired from all that chewing and biting that comes with consuming solid food? How about liquidising the lot?
People would think that if you're not eating, you'd be more tired, but I think it's the opposite, to be honest.
Okay, I believe you, jump in the line, rock your body in time. Okay.
We're taking a look at whether, if we have the choice, we should swap our solids for liquids. In the future, will meals be bottle-shaped? And the mystery of why we lose the ability we're born with to be satisfied with a drink.
It all the time.
All that in the mix this week.
Work your body line. Work, 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 Sinora, work it all the time.
Have you ever thought about replacing a meal with a drink? How about doing that for a day, a week, the rest of your life? We seem to like turning foods into liquids. The global market for health drinks, smoothies and juices is huge. The smoothie sector alone will reach $15.8 billion in the next 5 years, according to research group Global Industry Analysts. The US has the biggest share of the market, but it's growing fastest in Asia. So, why all this slurping? Meet Natasha.
I tend to juice and do smoothies more than I eat actual fruit and veg. I think it's more to do with time as well, being on the go. And I feel like the juices give your digestive system a bit of a rest sometimes. Like, I might have a day where I just have straight juices just to give my body a cleanse. People would think that if you're not eating, you'd be more tired, but I think it's the opposite, to be honest.
And you're a personal trainer?
Yeah, so I'm into the natural health and fitness and that.
I met Natasha at Portobello Juice Cafe in West London. You can hear one of their industrial-sized blenders in the background there. The man making all the noise is co-owner and manager Daniel Santa.
Previous to this, I was a truck driver, eating lots of unhealthy stuff and lots of burgers and motorway foods. I haven't seen many healthy truck drivers on my travels, and I thought there's got to be a change somewhere. I had a friend who was trying to open a business, got involved together, and this is the outcome. Come over, I'll show you how it's done. So we're going to pour in about 400 millilitres of coconut water as a base. Next item is pineapple. 2 scoops of pineapple. And then we add the mango. 2 small scoops.
Well, I was going to ask you about that because if we look at the smoothies on your menu and they've got all sorts of wonderful good foods in them, apples, spinach, but there's a lot of sugar in those foods as well.
That's true. There is, even with the smoothies, they're not all as healthy as people believe. There's a lot of goodness, but there's a lot of sugar in them as well, natural sugar, but it's still sugar. And we do have some smoothies which have very little sugar, but most people choose the ones with sugar still. And then the special ingredient, activated bamboo charcoal.
A lot of people ask you for charcoal in their drink.
Yeah, it's been heated at 1,000 degrees. That gets rid of all the poisonous parts of it, and it's now good for you.
And is this a good way to make money? Because the actual ingredients for a smoothie aren't too expensive, are they? But smoothies cost, what, £4, £5?
If you make it sweet and sugary, it doesn't cost much, but the healthier green ones, where you got spinach, you got to put a lot of veg into a smoothie to fill it up. You don't get much juice out of a spinach or green vegetables. There's definitely more profit in the unhealthy stuff. There's definitely people replacing breakfast, lunch and even dinner with smoothies. A lot of people come in with their own recipes these days that they've got from whatever diet they're on, and they tell us what they want and we just make it.
Do you think that the ability to get so many nutrients and so many different fruit and vegetables in a bottle or like here in a cup, do you think that's removing us from our food? Do you think we're becoming more distant from the food we eat by processing it in this way?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, people say they don't have time, but it's nonsense, really. Of course, we have time to cook and eat, but we just don't. We're just becoming more and more lazy. People like things that are convenient, and it's a shame, really, because food is important. So put in jug, put the lid on.
Daniel's right about our desire for convenience. According to market intelligence company Mintel, in both the US and the UK, around 4/5 of us drink fruit juice, juice drinks, or smoothies. In the United States, around 4 in 10 of the people who buy nutritional or performance drinks use them to replace breakfast. That idea is popular in the UK too, where 4 in 10 juice and smoothie drinkers think a smoothie can be a good meal replacement. Mintel reports that 1 in 5 Americans who are trying to lose weight say they've taken part in a juice cleanse, replacing meals with fruit or vegetable drinks for a limited period of time. The company says this is part of a generational shift, which sees millennials rejecting diets based on taking something away in favour of strategies that they think add positive attributes, like raw food or detox food or meal replacements. Just the latest permutation, perhaps, of a long human history of turning food into drink.
Grinding things and mixing them with water is very old.
This is Anne Murcott, an expert in sociology and food and honorary professor at the Food Study Centre at SOAS, University of London.
Soup is something that's really old in many parts of the world. If you go to medieval Europe, there was something called pottage. And if you were lucky, you had a pot. And if you were lucky, you had a fire. And if lucky, you had some water. And you put in whatever you found in the way of leaves or green stuff that you collected wild, or you might have grown something. And you keep putting stuff in, and it's sloppy and it cooks. You know, if you're lucky, you have a bowl. And if you're lucky, you have a spoon. Or if you're lucky, you have some bread and you dunk it in and then you slurp it.
And pureed fruit drinks have been around for centuries too, particularly in Mediterranean countries and Asia. It wasn't until the 20th century that home refrigeration and blenders helped make smoothies popular in the West. For Anne, there's something familiar about the rise of juice bars and smoothies.
Some listeners who knew England in the mid-1950s are likely to remember the advertisements for milk with the slogan, "Drink a pinter milk a day." Making drinking milk popular was the subject of an enormous effort. Now, at the core of the campaign was the idea that milk was a complete food, containing all the major nutrients that anybody would need, with the exception of vitamin C. And so during the Second World War, what was available to mothers and new babies were subsidised milk and subsidised orange juice. And there is a neat historical comparison between milk and smoothies. Over 100 years ago in Scotland, as well as elsewhere in Britain, the fashionable, new and exciting place to go was a milk bar. Milk bars were presented as health-giving, clean, modern. Smoothies are presented as health-giving, modern, and in the new vocabulary for food, probably clean too.
This trend for smoothies, these companies that are trying to put a meal in a bottle, what does that tell us about the society we live in or how we're changing?
It tells us about a very clever and a very efficient food industry, perhaps. If you or I were in business selling something to do with food, whatever it was, we would know there's a physical limit to what everybody could eat that day. So you can't make your market bigger, or I think the expression nowadays, grow your market, because there is a physiological limit to how much people can eat. So you've got to find a way of tempting them to buy what you're producing rather than what somebody else is producing. So there's a very imaginative streak, if you like, in all kinds of industries, in particular in the food industries, trying to develop new things in order to be able to attract people to buy their products. And that's perfectly reasonable.
But people wouldn't buy these things unless they wanted them. There is demand for these products.
But then where does the demand come from? Because you don't have people lining up and saying, we want smoothies, if they've never heard of them. Somebody has to invent them. You could say, as some social scientists do, that demand is induced by the suppliers.
So, for Anne, it's all in the marketing. Well, whatever it is, it seems to be working. People are drinking their food and replacing their meals with a bottle. But is this good for us? Let's go on a journey through the adult digestive system to try to understand all this further. Richard Mattis is our guide. He's Distinguished Professor of Nutritional Science at Purdue University in Indiana in the US. We'll start in the mouth, or the oral cavity, as Richard calls it.
Chewing is primarily responsible for reducing particle size to a level where we can safely swallow. Much of the oral processing phase of digestion is a safety mechanism so that we don't accidentally have it go into our trachea and create problems. Saliva moistens the food in the oral cavity. It has chemicals in it so that it's a little bit more slippery, so it's easier to swallow. It has digestive enzymes in it itself.
What about all those teeth? What would happen if we didn't need to chew?
If you drink perpetually and don't chew your food, one would predict that you'd have loss of enamel. Stress is important. The forces generated when chewing help to strengthen the underlying bone, and that's important for retaining the teeth.
Let's move now along the throat and all the way down the esophagus to the stomach.
Part of the role of the stomach is to further reduce the particle size before it can then enter the intestine where the nutrients will be absorbed. So a beverage will be in a form that can exit the stomach more quickly. And if the stomach is not distended, it's not generating a satiety signal.
And let's stop our journey here, because this is the crux of the problem. Richard says when we drink, our brain doesn't realise we're full, or satiated, as he puts it.
We don't monitor the energy as well with beverages, and as a result, the energy that they contribute tend to add energy to our diet rather than substitute for other energy sources. And as a result, we take in more total energy, and that promotes weight gain and overweight and obesity. The thicker the beverage, the more satiating it appears to be. There is something about that solid food that generates a signal, but it's been difficult to document experimentally. If one is interested in increasing total energy intake in an individual, for example, in a cancer patient or an elderly patient, never do we give them a solid food. It's always a liquid supplement because they can take in more total energy before they feel satiated.
So we don't know for sure why we don't feel full after a calorie-filled drink, but Richard has an explanation.
So there's an argument that is based on experience and common sense that would suggest, as we evolved as a species, we really never drank energy after weaning. And so why would we have a sensory system or a physiological system focused on that? Basically, we met our hydration needs with water. It's only more recently that we have taken in substantial amounts of energy through beverages, and so we just may not be well equipped to monitor that energy.
While we're talking to a scientist, let's have a word about sugar. For some years now, there's been a lot of criticism around the amount of it in juice and smoothies.
We do consume a great deal of energy in the form of sugar through beverages, and my interpretation of this is that the real problem is the beverage. It's the form of food that we're consuming rather than the source of the energy. We would have as much trouble modulating energy balance with a liquid food that was high in protein or one that was high in fat.
Richard Mattis. The argument about smoothies and juices being full of sugar is well worn, but while researching this programme, we found something we hadn't heard before at the Royal Brompton Hospital in London. Dr. Isabel Skeepler is a consultant allergy dietitian.
It's called pollen food syndrome or oral allergy syndrome, and it affects about 2% of the UK population. And this is an allergy that's likely to increase because more and more people are becoming sensitive or allergic to tree and grass pollen. We're now a nation that is very keen to eat lots of raw fruits and vegetables in the form of smoothies or juices. The reason people get reactions to these raw fruits and vegetables is because they are allergic to pollens. So their pollen antibodies are recognising proteins in these raw foods and reacting to them because they think that the person is eating tree pollen.
The problem with smoothies being that they allow you to have too much of a particular fruit or vegetable. They allow you to have 8 carrots at once, which you would never normally eat, or 7 apples.
Yes, that's right. As soon as you crunched into the carrot or the apple, you'd realise something was happening and you'd stop eating it. Whereas by the time you've realised, you've drunk half a smoothie or carrot juice and you're having a much more severe reaction because you've had a lot more allergen before you've realised it's causing a problem. Sometimes people can have a very severe but local reaction, which isn't anaphylaxis, but certainly feels like it to the person because they might get some very severe swelling in their throat.
When a smoothie causes the problem, is it because quite simply you're having too much of that particular fruit, or is it about the form the fruit takes when you break down and you change the composition?
Actually, the more processed something is with pollen food syndrome, the less likely it is to cause a reaction. But the reason that smoothies do is because the whole fruit will contain more allergen. The allergen's in the pips and the peel of fruit. If you have a smoothie made from fruit juices that have already been made into juice and have been heat treated, then they're far less likely to cause a problem. I do not want to give the idea that it's not good for people to have fruits and vegetables. I would actually think it's probably better for them to eat them in their natural state rather than having a huge amount liquidized in a smoothie machine. But if you don't know you've got this problem and you go out and have a smoothie and you have a reaction, it could be more severe than if you were just eating that fruit.
You're listening to The Food Chain on the BBC World Service with me, Emily Thomas. This week, should we drink our food?
Wild as a bug, I'm in love. I'm all shook up.
We've heard the problem with juices and smoothies is the amount of good stuff they allow us to gulp down in one go. Too much sugar, and for the unlucky few, too many allergens. We also discovered how our brains won't let us fill up when our meal is in liquid form, although the thicker the drink, the better. But a lot of time, money and advertising is being poured into the idea that drinkable food is the future. In recent years, a number of companies have cropped up with drink products designed to replace meals, aimed at the busy consumer. One of the best known, perhaps, is Soylent. Its story goes like this. 3 years ago, a group of software engineers in Silicon Valley in California decided food was just too time-consuming. Here's the CEO, Rob Reinhart, speaking to the BBC World Service back then.
I was very frustrated with my food on both a personal and a systemic level. I found myself repeating the same work over and over again, going to the grocery store, sitting in traffic, waiting in line, cooking it, doing dishes over and over again. Lots of wasted water, wasted time, wasted fuel. I just thought that there had to be a more efficient way. So I did a lot of work on nutritional biochemistry, seeing how the cell works, what nutrients the body needs. I tried to refine it a little. All of these approximately 35 nutrients that the body requires, putting it together, just powder, oil, and water.
And it took off. The company now calls their powder product a nutritionally complete food source, which can replace any meal. Although Soylent wouldn't share any figures with us, the company's reported to have shipped out more than 25 million servings of Soylent across the US and Canada. So what's it like to choose to live on a diet like this? Brian Merchant is a journalist for Vice magazine and lived off Soylent powder alone, give or take a few beers, coffees and some chewing gum, for 30 days.
My health didn't really feel like it was impacted in too detrimental a way. I lost 10 pounds. I went to the doctor and she actually said, you lost what we call good fat. But about halfway through, I just found that it was more of a psychological thing. Like, was I becoming this more efficient force at work? Did I really want to be that efficient? Everybody else would go out to lunch or have dinner. What did I do? I stayed home and I wrote, and I did get more done. I also drove my wife crazy because she, wanted to have a normal social life and she wanted to go out to dinner and she likes to cook. And the very worst part was that supreme isolation, the fact that you're just chugging this tasteless sort of monochrome glug.
Brian Merchant. The idea of meal replacement drinks has taken off in Europe too. Tobias Stober can tell us about that. He's the CEO of a German company called Bertrand. It claims to have developed a food that contains all recommended nutrients required by the human body and to use no chemical replacements or synthetic vitamins.
We have oats, we have ground coconut, we have almonds, we have some kind of algae, rice protein, and so on. It came all powdered, and when you want to eat it, you just have to add some water, shake it, and then it takes like a kind of muesli, I would say.
And who is it that's buying this product?
We are mainly serving screen workers who cannot or will not cook. But over time, people have joined the ranks who want to lose weight, and we have single retirees who do not want to cook on their own anymore.
How much does your product cost?
At its cheapest, approximately $9.50 per day.
Is this something you're expecting people to do for a whole day, for a whole week, for good?
The main idea of Soylent was to replace every meal that a conventional food is. But there are, as of yet, no long-term studies that have been undertaken for how a long-term consumption affects your health. And we have customers, though, who have been eating nothing but Bertrand for several weeks and who are very happy with it. But currently, we cannot recommend a diet that consists solely of powdered fruit. And furthermore, in Germany, it is prohibited to express such recommendation as an advertisement.
You say on your website that your formula combines all nutrients recommended by dietitians. Do you really know that all the nutrients a human being needs are in your powder?
Science isn't so far that we can say we know every nutrient we need, but our composition consists of ingredients who are well known for being very nutritious. So when there are no new nutrients being discovered, I think the chance is much higher that there are in a formula which consists of more than 20 natural ingredients.
But are meal replacement drinks really good for us? Professor Amy Bentley is from the Department of Nutrition and Food Studies at New York University.
Nutritional science is developing and learning new information all the time. There are a variety of things out there that we don't even know the importance of what they do to our body. And so when we isolate certain elements that we think are important, we're missing the whole big picture. Research is showing that we all don't react to foods in the same way, and so it's really difficult to say that there's one particular way to eat.
We hear a lot about voluntary liquid diets. So, for example, you replace a meal or even meals for a whole day with juice or something like that. And there seems to be this pervasive belief out there that this kind of diet's good for you or cleansing in some way. But is there any science behind that?
The science that I'm aware of actually indicates the opposite. Our body needs fiber. Fiber is involved in whole fruits and vegetables, for instance. And so that fiber provides roughage that, in essence, helps clean out our systems. There's very little evidence that cleansers actually clean the colon or the gut.
The belief seems to be that you're giving your system a rest in some way.
I think what gives your body a rest is waiting in between meals. And our stomachs are incredibly strong organs. They're really built to take a lot. It's a luxury to cut out a wide variety of foods that are commonly available. Only people who have a certain means of wealth and income can say, okay, I'm only going to drink my calories. Soylent was developed by Silicon Valley. It's a darling of the high-tech industry. The stereotype is that the computer programmer sitting at his computer can just drink this drink and not have to worry about fixing food. That's a pretty masculine persona. And there have been other and are other meal replacements that are exactly the same thing or essentially the same thing. And Slim Fast, the diet drink, is one of those, and that's gendered female, of course. And then there's one for elderly people in the United States called Ensure that's been around for a long time. But these don't have the cachet, these don't have the drama, the excitement of the product such as Soylent. Why is Soylent so much different and so much better than these other drinks that have been around? And I think some of it has to do with this masculine Silicon Valley persona.
Can you see a time in the future, and how long might it be, when we could know all the nutrients we need and put them in drink form and live on that permanently?
I mean, maybe, but I guess the other question is, why would you? I mean, food is so important culturally and socially. If we take ourselves out of those important social and cultural institutions and rituals, we are cutting ourselves off from very important human social organizations.
That was Dr. Amy Bentley. And that's all for this week. Let us know what you think. You can find us using the hashtag BBC Food Chain. For now, from me, Emily Thomas, and the rest of the Food Chain team, Kent DePinto, Simon Tulitt and Faria Massoud. Thanks for listening, and join us again next week.
Shake, 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 Sinora, shake it all the time. Work, 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 Sinora.
Brand new drama on the BBC World Service.
My name is Nayara, and I'm on a journey between the real and the imagined.
What is this place?
Just an